The Fire from Beyond, A Tale of Los Angeles Under Siege. Part 1, The Antarctic Discovery. The first signs came from the ice. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at her monitoring station within the Starlink Antarctic Research Facility, her eyes fixed on the peculiar readings flooding her screens. The satellite array, designed to study deep space phenomena and maintain Earth's expanding internet constellation, had detected something unprecedented beneath the ancient ice sheets. "Director Matthews," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You need to see this." James Matthews, a veteran of both NASA and SpaceX, made his way across the facility's main control room. The stark white walls and blue LED lighting gave the space an appropriately otherworldly feel. Outside, the perpetual Antarctic night pressed against the reinforced windows, a darkness broken only by the occasional aurora australis. "What have you got?" Matthews asked, leaning over Sarah's shoulder to study the complex data patterns crossing her screen. "The quantum interference patterns we've been tracking? They're not random." Sarah pulled up a three-dimensional model of the ice shelf. "There's a structure down there, about 2 miles beneath the surface, and it's active." Matthews frowned, his weathered face reflecting in the monitor. "Active how?" "It's generating energy signatures unlike anything we've ever recorded. The pattern suggests some form of quantum communication, but it's being disrupted by our satellite network." Sarah zoomed in on a particular section of data. "Every time we adjust the Starlink array, there's a corresponding fluctuation in the energy readings from below." "How long has this been happening?" "Hard to say. We only noticed because of the new quantum sensors we installed last month. But looking at historical data," Sarah pulled up another chart, "these patterns have been present for at least the past century. We just didn't have the technology to detect them until now." Matthews straightened up, running a hand through his graying hair. "Get me a secure line to Houston. And Sarah, not a word of this to anyone outside the facility." But it was already too late. 2 miles beneath their feet, something ancient was stirring, awakening from a slumber that had lasted millennia. The Starlink satellites orbiting high above the Earth had inadvertently created a web of interference, disrupting the delicate quantum fields that had kept the alien outpost hidden for so long. In the following days, the facility became a hive of activity. Additional researchers were flown in despite the harsh Antarctic winter, and new equipment arrived daily on military transport planes. The United States government had taken an immediate interest in the discovery, as had several other world powers. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly, attempting to understand the nature of the energy signatures. The structure beneath the ice appeared to be massive, spanning several square kilometers. More disturbing were the changes they were detecting. The energy outputs were increasing, and new patterns were emerging. "It's like it's waking up," she explained to Matthews one evening as they reviewed the latest data. "And I don't think it's happy about our presence." Matthews nodded grimly. "The Pentagon's concerned. They've detected similar energy signatures in other locations around the globe, all of them seemingly activated by our satellite network." "We need to shut it down," Sarah said firmly. "The Starlink system, all of it, until we understand what we're dealing with." "It's not that simple. The economic implications would be catastrophic. Half the world's communications rely on that network now." Matthews shook his head. "Besides, we don't know if shutting it down would make any difference at this point." Sarah was about to respond when the facility's alarms began blaring. Red emergency lights bathed the control room in an ominous glow. She rushed to her station, fingers flying across the keyboard. "The energy readings are off the charts," she shouted over the alarm. "Something's happening." The entire facility shuddered as if struck by an earthquake. Outside, the perpetual Antarctic night was suddenly illuminated by a brilliant blue light erupting from beneath the ice. The light shot upward into the sky like a reverse lightning bolt, disappearing into the clouds. "My God," Matthews whispered, staring out the window. "What have we done?" Similar scenes were playing out across Antarctica. Hidden structures, dormant for thousands of years, were awakening. The aliens who had established these outposts eons ago had chosen Earth's most isolated continent for a reason. It was meant to be a quiet corner of the planet where they could monitor humanity's development from a safe distance. But humanity's technological progress had finally reached a point where it was interfering with their sophisticated equipment. The Starlink satellite constellation, with its complex quantum communication networks, had created an unprecedented level of interference. What was meant to be a passive observation post was now compromised. Deep beneath the ice, ancient machinery hummed to life. Frozen chambers thawed, releasing their occupants from suspended animation. The aliens had anticipated this possibility, had planned for it. If their observation post was ever discovered or compromised, protocols would be initiated. In their command centers beneath the ice, the aliens assessed the situation. Their monitoring systems had collected data on human civilization for centuries. They knew humanity's strengths and weaknesses, its most vital centers of population and technology. And they knew that a swift, decisive response would be necessary to maintain their secrecy and security. Los Angeles was chosen as the first target for a reason. It represented much of what the aliens found most threatening about human civilization: its rapid technological advancement, its massive population centers, its cultural influence across the globe. More practically, it was also home to several key aerospace and technology companies that could potentially develop countermeasures against their planned operations. As the alien facilities across Antarctica hummed with activity, Dr. Chen and her colleagues worked desperately to understand what was happening. They sent warning after warning up the chain of command, but bureaucracy moved slowly, and few were willing to believe the true scope of what was coming. "The energy signatures are changing," Sarah reported, her voice tense. "They're not just communicating anymore. They're preparing for something." Matthews stood at the facility's main window, watching as more pillars of light erupted from the ice in the distance. "How long?" he asked. Sarah studied the data scrolling across her screen. "Based on the energy buildup, hours, maybe less." "Get me the Secretary of Defense," Matthews ordered. "Now." But even as the warnings began to move through official channels, the aliens were already implementing their plans. Vessels that had lain dormant beneath the ice for thousands of years were powering up, preparing to emerge. They had studied human military capabilities extensively and knew exactly how to neutralize any potential resistance. In Los Angeles, it was a beautiful spring evening. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Traffic moved along the freeways in its usual slow dance. People went about their lives, unaware that beneath the Antarctic ice, an ancient force was preparing to change their world forever. The first signs would come soon enough, but by then, it would be too late to prevent what was coming. The City of Angels was about to face a force beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, and the consequences would reshape the world as they knew it. Sarah Chen stared at her monitors, watching as the energy readings continued to spike. She thought about the millions of people going about their lives in Los Angeles and other cities around the world. They had no idea what was coming. The Starlink system, meant to connect humanity like never before, had instead awakened something that had been watching them all along. And now, that something was ready to make its presence known. The attack began at sunset. Los Angeles was enjoying one of its famously beautiful evenings when the first anomalies appeared in the sky. Initially, they looked like unusual cloud formations, swirling vortexes that reflected the dying sunlight in strange, iridescent patterns. Social media quickly filled with photos and videos of the phenomenon, with amateur meteorologists offering various explanations. But Dr. Elena Rodriguez, watching from her office at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, knew better. The patterns matched exactly what their deep space monitoring systems had been tracking for the past few hours: quantum distortions in the fabric of space-time itself. "They're coming through," she whispered, reaching for her phone to alert her superiors. But before she could dial, the first vessel emerged. It appeared suddenly, seeming to tear through the fabric of reality itself. The alien ship was massive, easily the size of a small city, its surface a shifting maze of geometric patterns that seemed to defy the laws of physics. It hung above downtown Los Angeles like a dark star, its presence immediately throwing the city into chaos. Traffic ground to a halt as millions of people stopped to stare at the impossible sight above them. Emergency services were immediately overwhelmed with calls. At LAX, all flights were grounded as air traffic controllers tried to make sense of what their radar systems were telling them. In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Chen and her team watched in horror as their worst fears were realized. The energy signatures they'd been tracking had culminated in the opening of what appeared to be a quantum portal above Los Angeles. "We need to shut down the Starlink system now," Sarah shouted, but she knew it was too late. The aliens had already established their beachhead. The first attack came without warning. A beam of intense energy, so bright it turned night to day, lanced down from the alien vessel. It struck the Vincent Thomas Bridge, instantly vaporizing the massive structure and sending thousands of tons of superheated metal and concrete raining into the harbor below. The city's emergency response system, already strained, now went into full crisis mode. Police Chief Michael Torres, watching from his office in downtown LA, immediately initiated emergency protocols. But how do you prepare for an enemy that can destroy infrastructure with a single shot? "Get everyone off the streets," he ordered through the emergency broadcast system. "Seek shelter in basement levels or subway stations. This is not a drill," but the aliens were just getting started. More ships emerged from the quantum portals, each one taking up position above key points in the city. The Hollywood sign, the Capitol Records building, the U.S. Bank Tower, all became target points for the alien vessels. Dr. Rodriguez, still watching from JPL, was frantically gathering data. "The energy weapons they're using," she explained to military officials over an emergency video conference, "they're not just destroying structures, they're igniting the very air itself. The heat signature is off the charts." She was right. Each alien energy beam left trails of plasma in its wake, creating artificial lightning storms that spread through the city's corridors of steel and glass. The temperature in downtown Los Angeles began to rise dramatically as the atmospheric effects accumulated.
In Griffith Observatory, astronomers watched in amazement as their instruments detected massive gravitational distortions around each alien vessel. "They're not just floating there," Dr. James Chen, no relation to Sarah, reported to the hastily assembled scientific task force. "They're manipulating gravity itself to maintain their positions. The technology it's beyond anything we've ever theorized." The military response, when it came, proved frustratingly ineffective. Fighter jets scrambled from Edwards Air Force Base found their targeting systems completely confused by the alien vessels' shifting geometric patterns. The few missiles that were launched seemed to pass right through the ships, as if they weren't fully present in our dimension. "Conventional weapons are useless," General Sandra Martinez reported from the Pentagon's Emergency Command Center. "We need to find another way to fight these things." But the aliens weren't interested in a prolonged battle. Their attack had a specific purpose: to demonstrate their superior technology and to deliver a message. That message came in the form of a citywide broadcast, overriding all communications channels. The voice that spoke was oddly mechanical, yet carried undertones of something ancient and utterly inhuman. "Your species has interfered with our observation protocols. Your technological development has reached a point where it threatens our security. This demonstration is a warning. Remove your satellite network, or we will be forced to take more dramatic action." In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Chen was already working on a potential solution. The aliens' quantum technology seemed to interact with the Starlink system in specific ways. If they could modify the satellite network's quantum communication protocols, perhaps they could disrupt the aliens' ability to maintain their dimensional portals. "It's a long shot," she explained to Matthews, "but it's the only option we have right now." Meanwhile, Los Angeles continued to burn. The plasma storms created by the alien weapons had ignited numerous fires throughout the city, and the rising heat was creating its own weather system. Thunderclouds formed above the city, sparked by the intense energy exchanges, and soon lightning began to strike randomly across the urban landscape. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Hospitals were filled beyond capacity with burn victims and people suffering from radiation exposure. The few areas that still had power were turned into makeshift shelters, while millions tried to evacuate the city via crowded freeways. In the Starlink facility in Antarctica, Dr. Chen worked frantically to implement her plan. "The aliens' quantum technology operates on principles similar to our satellite network," she explained to her team. "If we can create a resonance cascade through the Starlink constellation." But time was running out. The aliens had given Earth an ultimatum, and Los Angeles was burning. The question now was, could humanity find a way to fight back before it was too late? The counterattack. As Los Angeles burned beneath the alien onslaught, humanity began to rally its resources for a counterattack. The response came not just from military forces, but from scientists, engineers, and everyday citizens who refused to submit to the extraterrestrial threat. Dr. Sarah Chen's work in Antarctica had revealed a crucial weakness in the alien strategy. Their quantum technology, while far advanced beyond human capabilities, operated on principles that could be understood and potentially disrupted. The key lay in the very thing that had attracted their hostile attention, the Starlink satellite network. Their dimensional portals require a stable quantum field to remain open, she explained during an emergency video conference with military and scientific leaders worldwide. The Starlink network inadvertently disrupted their hidden bases because our quantum communication protocols created interference patterns. If we can amplify that effect, we could force their portals to collapse, Dr. Rodriguez finished from her position at JPL. The two scientists, though separated by thousands of miles, had arrived at the same conclusion. The plan was audacious. It would require reprogramming the entire Starlink constellation to emit specific quantum frequencies, essentially turning Earth's satellite network into a massive weapon. But the challenges were enormous. We'll need to modify thousands of satellites simultaneously, Sarah explained. And we'll only get one chance. Once they realize what we're trying to do. The operation was designated Project Quantum Shield. While Dr. Chen and her team worked on the programming changes needed for the satellites, the military focused on buying them time. Conventional weapons might not harm the alien vessels, but they could provide a distraction. In Los Angeles, the situation had reached a critical point. The alien-induced fires had merged into a massive firestorm that threatened to consume the entire metropolitan area. The temperature in the city center had risen to unprecedented levels, creating a weather phenomenon known as a fire tornado. Chief Torres, coordinating emergency responses from a mobile command center in the San Fernando Valley, watched as the city he'd sworn to protect was transformed into an inferno. "We need to focus on evacuation," he told his officers. "Get as many people out as we can. The scientists need time to implement their plan." The evacuation of Los Angeles became the largest mass movement of people in American history. Millions fled north and east, creating massive refugee camps in the Mojave Desert and along the coast. The aliens, surprisingly, did not interfere with the evacuation. Their focus seemed to be on destruction of infrastructure rather than human casualties. At JPL, Dr. Rodriguez made a breakthrough in understanding the aliens' technology. "Their ships aren't fully present in our dimension," she reported. "They exist in a quantum superposition, which is why our weapons pass right through them. But if we can force them to fully materialize." The military seized on this information. General Martinez authorized a daring plan. While the scientists worked on the satellite network, special forces teams would attempt to plant quantum resonance devices at key points around the city. These devices, hastily constructed based on Dr. Rodriguez's research, might force the alien ships to become more vulnerable to conventional weapons. The operation was a testament to human courage. Teams of soldiers moved through the burning city, dodging alien energy beams and battling the effects of extreme heat and radiation to place the devices. Many didn't make it back, but their sacrifice would prove crucial. In Antarctica, Dr. Chen's team worked around the clock to implement the necessary changes to the Starlink network. The programming was complex, requiring each satellite to be precisely calibrated to generate the correct quantum interference patterns. "We're basically turning the entire network into a quantum weapon," she explained to Matthews. "But we have to be precise. If our calculations are off by even a fraction." The aliens seemed to sense that something was happening. Their attacks on the city intensified, and new ships began to emerge from the portals. But they had made a crucial mistake in their strategy. By focusing their attack on Los Angeles, they had given humanity a chance to mount one final, desperate defense. The fall of hope. The quantum shield strategy had failed. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of the Antarctic facility, watching as the last readings from the Starlink network faded into static. The aliens had anticipated their plan, using their superior understanding of quantum mechanics to not only neutralize the attempted counterattack but to turn it against Earth's defenders. They used our own satellites as amplifiers, she explained to the remnants of her team, her voice hollow with defeat. Every attempt we made to disrupt their portals only made them stronger. The scene in Los Angeles had become apocalyptic. The city was now completely engulfed in alien-generated plasma fires that burned at temperatures hot enough to melt steel. The once proud skyline had been reduced to twisted, molten ruins. The fire tornadoes had merged into a single, massive vortex that reached into the stratosphere, visible from space as a wound in the Earth's atmosphere. Dr. Rodriguez, who had refused to evacuate JPL, made one final transmission before the facility was consumed by the inferno. "They're not just destroying the city," she reported, her voice crackling through the emergency frequencies. "They're terraforming it. The chemical composition of the atmosphere is changing. They're making it more like..." Her transmission cut off abruptly as JPL disappeared in a flash of alien energy. The military's last stand proved equally futile. The quantum resonance devices, while briefly successful in forcing some alien ships to fully materialize, had an unexpected side effect. When the ships became fully present in our dimension, they revealed their true nature, structures so vast and geometrically impossible that human minds could barely comprehend them. General Martinez, watching from the Pentagon as the last squadrons of fighters were swatted from the sky like insects, finally gave the order to stand down. "We're only sending our people to die," she announced to the Joint Chiefs. "We need to focus on saving as many lives as possible." The aliens' message was broadcast again, this time to every electronic device on Earth: "Your resistance has been noted. The consequences will be severe." New portals began opening, not just over Los Angeles but above major cities worldwide. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, one by one, Earth's great metropolitan centers found themselves under attack by forces they couldn't hope to combat. The President of the United States, speaking from a secure bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, addressed what remained of the nation: "My fellow Americans, today we face a threat beyond anything in human history. We have fought bravely, but we must now acknowledge that our current capabilities are no match for this advanced civilization. We must focus on survival." The New Order. The final phase of the alien invasion was swift and methodical. Having demonstrated their absolute technological superiority in Los Angeles, the aliens proceeded to systematically neutralize Earth's ability to resist. The Starlink network, along with every other satellite in orbit, was destroyed in a single, coordinated attack. Earth's communications infrastructure collapsed almost instantly. The Internet, global positioning systems, and most modern technology became useless overnight. Dr. Chen, watching the destruction from Antarctica, realized the terrible truth. "They're not just punishing us," she told Matthews as they observed another quantum portal opening above the ice shelf. "They're resetting us. Taking us back to a pre-technological state." The aliens' true base in Antarctica expanded, breaking through the ice in a display of engineering that defied human understanding. A massive structure, like a city made of shifting geometric patterns and impossible angles, rose from the frozen continent. This would become their primary command center on Earth. Los Angeles, now completely transformed by the alien attack, became their first surface outpost. The ruins of the city were encased in a dome of energy that altered the very laws of physics within its boundaries. Those who observed it from a safe distance reported seeing impossible structures growing from the ashes, buildings that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that made human eyes hurt to look at them. The aliens' message to humanity was clear and final: "Your species has been judged and found wanting. You will be contained and studied. Resistance will result in further reduction of your technological capabilities. Compliance will be rewarded with survival. The terms of humanity's surrender were simple and non-negotiable. All advanced technology was to be abandoned. No electronic devices more sophisticated than simple calculators would be permitted. No aircraft would be allowed in the skies. The human population would be restricted to designated zones, while the aliens established their monitoring stations across the planet. Dr. Sarah Chen, in her final report before the Antarctic facility was shut down, wrote, "We thought we were reaching for the stars with our satellites and our quantum communications. Instead, we attracted the attention of something that had been watching us all along. Something that decided we weren't ready for the power we were beginning to grasp." The last images from Los Angeles showed the city completely transformed. Where once stood the proud achievements of human architecture, now rose alien structures that seemed to mock the very concepts of space and time. The fire had died, but what replaced it was somehow more terrifying, a city that no longer belonged to Earth. 1 year after the initial attack, humanity had been effectively reduced to a pre-industrial civilization, living under the constant surveillance of their alien overseers. The ruins of Los Angeles stood as a monument to their defeat, a warning of what happened when humanity reached too far, too fast. The aliens had won, not through brute force alone, but by demonstrating such technological superiority that resistance became not just futile, but unimaginable. They now watched from their bases, ensuring humanity would never again threaten their quantum network with unauthorized technological advancement. And deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in chambers that had waited patiently for millennia, the aliens began the next phase of their long-term plans for Earth. The human experiment had reached a critical point, and now it would proceed under much closer supervision. The age of human independence was over. The age of alien dominion had begun. The end.